Well, thank you, Suzanne, and welcome to this morning's Company Spotlight. I'm Harold Kim, and on behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we are absolutely thrilled to have with us today the Vice Chair and President of Microsoft, none other than Brad Smith. Hey, Brad, how are you today?
I'm fine. It's great to be with you. It's great to be with everyone as part of this.
Well, Brad, I've followed your career for a few decades now, and it's always refreshing, personally for me as a lawyer, to see another lawyer do something outside of the practice of law. So, really, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Well, you can always check out Brad's bio online, but what I will say about Brad is that he is a true defender and promoter of our free enterprise system. And as you're going to hear later today, he's also a real thought leader when it comes to the intersection of technology, of policy, and how it affects our society writ large. In fact, Brad, I just picked up your best-selling book, and I think the title is Tools and Weapons: The Promise and Peril of the Digital Age. I have it on my reading list for this year, and after this, I'm going to have to ask you to sign the book for me, so that's going to be on its way. But
no problem.
I thought the book really presents the perfect framework for our discussion today. You know, when we talk about the balancing act between these emerging technologies, which are just amazing, and the risks potentially that they present in terms of how we work, how we operate as a society. And we're going to be talking about it into the context of artificial intelligence, or AI. And so why don't we just level set a little bit here? When that technology exploded on the scene in November of 2022, I would imagine that a lot has changed even since then. And so from your perspective, how do you see businesses today leveraging these everyday technologies in their work from a day in, day out basis?
I think it's a great question. And I would say, since November 30th of 2022, when ChatGPT launched, we've seen, I would say, businesses go through three phases. The first phase was just, wait, what is this? Wanting to learn a little bit about it and asking questions and reading. And that phase really went from last November to, I'll say, sort of April or so. We then entered a second phase where we really started to see businesses across the country and around the world develop what are called proofs of concept, or POCs, as the industry calls them. We had more than 3,000 customers this last summer doing precisely that. They would take the AI tools, they would start to build custom applications themselves, they would apply it for a specific business process so they could experiment. And then I would say the third phase, the phase we're in now, is people are migrating to actual everyday use. And everyday use is still just starting to accelerate, but it absolutely is gaining momentum. And I would say we're seeing businesses gain momentum in three ways. One is really customized applications that use AI to really change or improve the fundamental business processes that are sort of core to their business. So if you're a pharmaceutical company, that might be drug discovery. The second thing is businesses are starting to use it across what you might call all of their back office functions: HR, legal, finance. They're using it to change the way their sales force works. They're using something like what we call the Azure OpenAI interface or service, so that then they can get an application and use that. And the third one, which is now just really starting to pick up, is more what probably everybody who's watching might use it for, a co-pilot. And it could be a co-pilot from Microsoft for Word, for Excel, for PowerPoint. I use that every day, and I use it to do research and to help me write. And so, just think of it as core business processes, common business processes, and then changing the way people do their jobs from a productivity and worker productivity perspective.
Well, in addition to businesses, I'm curious, how do you think consumers are using it? Are they using it? And if so, how are they using it? And do you see more consumer applications in the future as this technology continues to evolve?
Absolutely. And I would say consumers are starting to use it. More are talking about it than using it. To me, sort of the most common one is it's the next generation of what we've thought for the last 20 years as the search experience. So instead of, typing a phrase in and getting a bunch of blue links, you now just ask a question, and you can ask a compound question. For example, planning a trip as a tourist, and my wife and I were talking about, well, should we go to Seville or should we go to Lisbon? And then I was thinking, well, isn't Lisbon bigger than Seville? I'm not sure. Well, just think about what I would do if I were just using a classic search engine. I'd type in population of Lisbon. I might get an answer. I might have to click on it. I do population of Seville. Instead, I went to Bing Chat or Copilot, and I just asked, what are the populations of Lisbon and Seville? And it said, Lisbon is 3.2 million people. Seville is 700,000. Okay, yep, I was right. Lisbon's 4.5 times bigger. The same thing is true. You're looking for restaurants. What's the weather in 4 different places? Just list the places. That I think is changing the consumer experience. I'll just give you one other example. Everybody virtually these days does banking online. But the ability to not just use a consumer banking application, but ask it to, tell me how much I've spent so far this year, fill in the blank on rent, on groceries, at Nordstrom, and just have it, and put it in a table and give it to me. I think can really help people manage their money in an easier way.
You mentioned Lisbon. I'm going to have to tell my teenage daughter that she can use AI to find out about Taylor Swift's tour that's going to stop in Lisbon sometime next year. So mental note on that.
There you go.
Conventional wisdom, when people talk about AI, has been its impact on our labor markets, our labor force. What does this mean for the everyday employee who may be doing clerical work, administrative work? And so I'm curious, what are you all doing at Microsoft in terms of addressing your workforce needs when using these particular technologies?
I really think that this is, first of all, such an important question. And to some degree, I would call it where, business meets labor, where management meets employees. And fundamentally, I think that there are 2 things that are coming together and will need to come together. The first is this is a tool that will improve productivity. And of course, productivity is the foundation for almost all economic growth. And we live in a world that is actually pretty starved for productivity growth. So take any function that actually involves the creation of documents, the analysis of information, sifting through data. People are starting to use this, and this is where business processes will change. And then what does that mean for the people who work in a defined field? It actually, I think, means 3 things, and we don't yet know for a particular job which of the 3 it will be. First, there will be new jobs created. There already are for people who really, know how to use AI to strengthen or change the business process. Second, there will be some jobs that exist today that won't exist, or at least won't exist in the same number that they do today. And third, people's jobs will change, even if it's not a new job or a job that goes away. And what it really means is that people need to learn new skills. And so we're focused on helping the employees at Microsoft learn new skills. We have courses and the like, but I would also say, in a way that very much reminds me of starting to use a PC. I'm old enough that, I was in the first generation really to literally bring a PC into the workplace. Having come out of law school and saying, I don't want to leave my PC behind, I took it into a courthouse and said, I'm going to use this as a clerk working for a judge. And I insisted on having a PC then when I went to a law firm. There is no substitute for learning by using the technology. And the more people can find opportunities to use it, including, as the next generation search engine, use it to start to write things, use it to turn a Word document into PowerPoint slides and vice versa. that's how you get better. That's how you'll realize there's new insights that you can bring to others. The one point of career advice I'd give to, frankly, anybody of any age right now is if a year from now people are sitting around the equivalent of the proverbial water cooler talking about how they're using AI to do their jobs differently, be one of the individuals who has some experience, be one of the individuals who has some ideas to share. And so, I think part of what we're frankly just trying to do, in addition to formalized training, is make sure our employees have access to the services, which is not hard. I mean, there are services, but really lean in and encourage people to not just use it, but then share what they're learning.
Well, let's talk about the regulatory framework here a little bit. As you might know, over the past few years, the Chamber convened an AI commission. And in fact, early last year, we released a report which really talked about these promising new technologies. In addition, to recommending a risk-based regulatory framework. What is it that what is it that Microsoft is doing in the AI policy landscape, whether here in the United States or over across the pond in Europe?
Well, first, I just want to say I think that we really appreciate the work that the Chamber has done here, that what that commission did. I was familiar with the work, and I had the opportunity to pull it up and read it again this morning as I knew you and I would be talking. And I would first say where the Chamber is recommending the world go is very much where we're advocating the world go as well. And by that, I mean, it is a recognition that we have a innovation-led economy and we need innovation to flourish, but, or maybe and, we need to have the protection of people. We need to ensure that humans remain in control of this technology. We need to have safety and security standards in place. And one of the things I found fascinating about the commission report for the Chamber is it said that unless we have some regulation, we're likely to have market failure. That is not a sentence that most people would expect to see in the executive summary of a report from the American Chamber of Commerce, and yet is precisely right. Because most healthy markets for everyday products that can impact people's safety do have a degree of safety regulation in place. Airplanes, automobiles, literally the groceries in the grocery store. The key is to strike the right balance. So that's where we're focused, and we're very much focused on doing this on a global basis. So we're interacting with governments in easily a few dozen countries at this point, as each country is considering this.
The questions that I have, because the U.S. has led in developing technologies, whether the internet or even technologies from previous generations. How does the U.S. actually position itself as a leader in looking at AI and aligning it, with the safeguards or the guardrails that you've talked about, with, the reality that these technologies are rapidly developing so quickly?
I think fundamentally leadership in this space, if you're a government, requires three things. First, you have to have a good understanding of the problem. Second, you have to have some concrete, thoughtful ideas about how to solve or address those problems. And third, you have to do something. Because in a world where governments are, to some degree, almost competing with each other for leadership, if you don't do something, you can't be a leader. And what I've frankly been very encouraged by is the way the US government actually has leaned in on AI, frankly, in a way that it has yet to lean in on, say, something like data privacy writ large. And I think it's really led the world, frankly, in understanding the problem. It had a very collaborative exercise in a very appropriate way, in my view, of working with big tech companies and model builders like Microsoft, like OpenAI, Google and Anthropic, and then a broadening circle to understand the technology, get knee deep in the problems. They pushed us to offer solutions, then they pushed us to offer better solutions, and then first in the form of voluntary commitments, and then in an executive order, they're creating a blueprint. And then through the G7, They're working with other countries to find, sort of an international level of interaction. And of course, at the same time, the European Union has what's called the AI Act. So, you have some differing models. But I think that, frankly, as I look at it, this is U.S. leadership the way U.S. leadership is needed in this decade for this type of technology.
Well, getting back to your book from 2019, you had outlined a number of technology themes, and I'm curious as to, where we are now in 2024, 5 years later. Do you see some of the same themes carrying over, or are there differences that you've now identified?
Yeah, it's I'll let others judge whether it's a great book. I will say it has a great title because, and you want a title of a book to really capture what the essence of the issue is about. So, the fundamental premise of the book is that all technology can be used as both a tool and a weapon. And that's the history of technology. And there's a lot of historical stories in the book. And another premise in the book in 2019 was that AI would emerge as the most powerful tool, and therefore, as a corollary, potentially the most dangerous weapon if it's not managed well. And I have to say, because I go around the world and I'll sit down with a reporter and he'll say, I read your book to get ready to interview you and you made this prediction. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I about to hear? More so than not, the predictions in the book have largely proven to be pretty accurate. And I think that's because most technology flows in a river of ideas, so to speak. And the river may bend in certain directions you don't anticipate. But if you've been in the tech sector as long as I have been and my co-author has been, we have a pretty good sense. And so I actually think the book is actually there's some nuances. Generative AI has evolved to some degree faster, but this fundamental need to think about security, safety, privacy, the impact on markets, the issues with China, all of these continue to evolve. They keep becoming bigger, maybe more complicated. But that fundamental question for all of us, how do we ensure we maximize the benefit of the tool? How do we protect against it being used as a weapon? Those are, I would argue, some of the biggest questions of our time.
Very important balance to achieve. Well, we
every
just heard
day,
from
that's what we try to do every day, to be honest, in terms of the work we do.
Yeah. Well, we just heard from Suzanne on her State of American Business remarks, and it really focused on the importance of our free enterprise system. And so, since we're in that theme, my question to you, Brad, what does free enterprise mean to you as a leader, as a business leader, as a thought leader, especially with these new fascinating technologies that are online?
I think it means two things that are of fundamental importance to the world, as well as our country. Look, it's the ability to create something new. Maybe you create it by starting a business that doesn't exist. Maybe you work for an existing business and you create a product that doesn't exist. Or maybe you're working on an existing product, but you create a new feature or a new benefit or a new business model or a new distribution model. But it is that fundamental ability to create. That is extraordinary. And the second thing that it gives one the opportunity to do is to create something that is useful for the world. And one of the things that I always frankly get concerned about is that we live in a world where the best societies, including American society, I think of as a stool with three legs. There's a private sector, there's a government or public sector, and there's a third sector, which is the nonprofit sector. One thing they all have in common is people need money in order to get things done. Governments can tax to get money. Nonprofits ask for donations. I get frustrated when I see people in those two sectors look at us in business and say, well, you guys are just in it for the money. Well, we, like them, need money, and we don't get to tax people. We have to give people something that they value enough to pay for. But when you talk to people in business, I will argue we, like they, are fundamentally most days, and when we do our best work, focused on making our community, our country, and the world a better place. And what I always hope is that we can look at the three legs of this stool and not look at what sets us apart, but how a great society is based on harnessing the synergy of all three of these legs together and have everybody appreciate how we help each other.
Well, Brad, I can't thank you enough on behalf of the Chamber again for your time, for your excellent insights, and welcome a visit anytime you're here in the Washington, D.C. area. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in person.
Thank you.